everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Sagar and today we are checking out the cameras on this iPhone 17e. By this point, I believe most of you know that Apple uses the number of cameras on the back of their phone to differentiate between their lineup. So the Pro iPhones get 3 cameras on their back, the regular number series like the iPhone 17, 16, 15 and so on get 2 cameras, and the E series and the SE series prior to that just get a single camera on the back. Now at least this is what they have been following until now. This makes it easier for the users to choose the phone based on their requirements and priorities. I made a similar video for the iPhone 16e last year, and some of you who might have watched that video must remember that it did really well in the daytime shots, but it fell a bit short when we got to lower lighting situations. This iPhone 17e gets the same image sensor as the iPhone 16e, which is a bit disappointing, but it is now backed up by the image processing pipeline on the newer A19 chip, so it will be interesting to see how much of an improvement that brings along to its cameras. Before we get to the image and video samples, let us check out the cameras that we are working with. This phone gets just 2, so this part won't take that long. The front-facing camera gets a 12 megapixel sensor with f1.9 aperture. This is the one that we have been getting on most of the recent iPhones, including last year's iPhone 16e. So this phone doesn't get the new 18 megapixel selfie camera as the rest of the 17 series iPhones. The one on the back gets a 48 megapixel sensor with f1.6 aperture and 26mm lens. This is also the same one which we got on the iPhone 16. I was hoping that Apple would include the newer bigger 48 megapixel sensor as the one on the iPhone 16, 17 and the iPhone Air. But sadly, we are still stuck with the same 48 megapixel sensor that was used behind the ultra-wide camera on the iPhone 16 Pro. Anyways, we are here to see how this one performs and how much of a difference does the new A19 chip brings along. So let us begin by first checking out the image samples which I took in bright lighting conditions. Now unlike last year, I did not take the iPhone 17e on a trip to Ladakh. But don't worry, I was still able to get some amazing image samples from in and around Pune. It was summer when Apple brought out this phone, which is pretty much ideal situation for any smartphone's camera as there is no shortage of sunlight. Now I knew that this sensor is capable of capturing a lot of information, so I wasn't really surprised when it took such good looking images when I was outdoors. But this shot did surprise me. It was shot during daytime, but I was inside a store under artificial light. But look at the amount of details the 17e managed to capture. You can see every individual thread, knot and stitches as I zoom in on this part. Even though the light was not ideal, there is absolutely no noise or extra green in the shot. This is when the iPhone 17e's camera actually surprised me. It managed to capture a ton of details even when there wasn't a lot of light. Yes, this image was shot outdoors, but there were very dense trees around and I did not expect the sensor to take such clean image. After these initial few shots, I had no reason to believe that this phone could mess up any of the daytime shots. So even though I had the iPhone 17 and 17 Pro with me, I reached out for the 17e for taking a lot of my shots just because it's lighter and has a single camera. This way, I don't have to worry about switching the lenses or anything like that. I just pointed the camera at the scene and the results are in front of you. I enjoyed taking images with this phone so much that I took over 1500 images with it in just over 3 months, even when I had the iPhone 17 Pro and Air with me at the same time. I loved the simplicity of having just a single camera, and it also made me go back to the earlier days when we used to actually think about the composition of the shot instead of just standing at one spot and letting the different lenses do all of the work. I mean, having multiple lenses also has its own advantages, but I still had fun using the single camera on this iPhone 17e. The colors it delivers are pretty much how you see the scene with your own eyes. The image processing pipeline behind this camera is the same as the one on the iPhone 17 and 17 Pro, so you can trust it to deliver amazing looking colors, skin tones and white balance shot after shot after shot. I was a bit worried about these kind of shots, as most of the smartphones don't like the red colors or a lot of its shades. In the shot on the left, the phone at least had natural light, leaves and other things in the background to help it set the white balance and color temperature correctly. But in this shot on the right, it barely had any other color in the frame for the frame of reference other than the white ghost, and the 17e's main camera still performed excellent in this situation. I've clicked this exact shot with the S25 Ultra and also the OnePlus 15, and both of them messed the colors big time. So it is great to see that the iPhone 17e, which costs a fraction of those phones, is doing so good. If you don't like how these colors look and you want them to look a bit more cooler or warmer, or you want to increase the contrast or saturation on all of your shots, you can do that by using the photographic styles. But I think most of you will be happy with the colors coming out of this phone. After having messed up the HDR from the iPhone 12 to 15, Apple finally found the sweet spot last year with the Smart HDR 5. It had been working great, so they decided to carry it forward with the iPhone 17 series as well. And rightly so, as you can see, this algorithm handles even the harshest lighting conditions extremely well. The sun was right behind this lower coconut tree, so most of the phones would have either blown up and overexposed the sky or might have captured no details in the shadows at all. iPhone 17e on the other hand had made sure to make the shot look completely balanced. You will notice this with most of your shots. No matter the lighting conditions, the 17e handles the lighter and brighter parts of the shots really well. In most of the cases, it will try to lift the shadows from the darker parts while not letting the brighter areas of the scene blow out. And it won't go overboard with this to make the image look completely fake, and it keeps the image looking balanced and natural. Even if the sun is directly in the frame, you won't see the phone throwing off the contrast completely like we saw in some of the shots from the iPhone 16e last year. So ISP on the newer processor seems to have brought about some improvements after all. In majority of the cases, it might be a bit difficult to spot those differences as the 16e was doing really good during the daytime as it is. But there were some places where its performance slipped a bit, and I don't see the iPhone 17e doing that this time. A lot of the people who see me using a phone with a single camera are curious about its performance, and they are really surprised when I show them the results. Some of my friends who are tech savvy enough also made sure to check the EXIF information to make sure that these images are in fact shot with the iPhone 17e. After having used the iPhone 16 and 17 Pro, taking close-up shots with the 17e feels like such a treat. Most of the phones which have huge image sensors don't let you get very close to an object, or else they just lose the focus. This has been my number one complaint from Pro iPhones for the last few years, but that is not an issue on this iPhone 17e. Even though it has a 48 megapixel sensor and f1.6 aperture, it will let you get extremely close to your subject and still set the focus on it, making the close-up shots look this good. And since these are still being captured with the huge image sensor, the close-up shots have incredible amount of details in them. The phone is also very quick at setting the focus, so it doesn't keep on hunting for it. You just have to point your camera at the subject and the phone is ready with the focus by the time you are ready to hit the shutter button. I think focusing speed is very important, as one might even lose the interest in capturing close-up shots if the phone takes a long time to set the focus for each of the close-up shots. As good as these close-up shots look, and as close as the main camera lets you get to the subject, you still miss out on the ability of taking macro shots with this phone. The single main camera doesn't have the tech which lets you take macro shots. It does let you take 48 megapixel shots though. Well, you might now be wondering what does that mean, as throughout the video, I have been saying that the single camera on the back gets 48 megapixel resolution. Yes, well that is true. By default, this phone, like any of the other phones, captures binned or let's say compressed 24 megapixel shots. And all of the shots that we have seen until now have been 24 megapixel ones. The phone does this by default because 48 megapixel shots are huge in terms of file sizes, and that resolution doesn't capture the best looking images in lower or indoor lighting conditions. So to take care of these issues, Apple captures 48 megapixel shots with the main image sensor and then compresses them to 24 megapixel resolution. This still preserves a ton of detail in the shot. As you can see, both the 24 and 48 megapixel shots look pretty much identical when you put them side by side. You'll have to zoom in 6 to 8 times just to notice the extra bit of details in the 48 megapixel shot. Most people don't zoom in so much after they have captured the shot, so the extra bit of details being captured with the 48 megapixel mode would not be noticed in most of the conditions. This is one of the reasons why Apple makes 24 megapixel as default resolution for all of your shots. If you wish, you can change it from within the settings so all of your shots are being captured at the full 48 megapixel resolution. But be aware that each 48 megapixel shot is 3 to 4 times larger than the default shots in terms of file sizes. So if you shoot all of your shots at this resolution, you might run out of storage space on your phone in no time. Additionally, you will see a lot of noise or green in the darker parts of your shot as the phone doesn't apply pixel binning to reduce that noise. You can switch to the 48 megapixel mode when you are capturing shots of landscape or architecture in sunny lighting conditions, because these are the cases when you want to capture every minute detail, or in cases when you don't have enough time to compose a shot properly. For all of your other shots, I would recommend you guys switch to the default 24 megapixel mode, as those ones also capture a ton of details as we have seen earlier in the video. Although I am asking you to stick to the default 24 megapixel shots for most of the conditions, the 48 megapixel resolution sensor does serve a big purpose in making the single camera on the back of this phone feel a bit more versatile. In a very clever way, Apple uses the middle 12 megapixels of the sensor to let us capture lossless 2x digitally zoomed in shots. What this means is, you get to take 2x digitally zoomed in shots with this phone, which according to Apple are equal to the shots which can be clicked with a true optical 2x lens. So even though we get just one camera on the back of this phone, it actually gets two different focal lengths, 26mm or 1x and 52mm or 2x. These zoomed in shots look incredibly detailed. You can zoom in even further, but then the images just don't look as sharp. I won't be switching to this lens very often, especially when I am in indoors or in low lighting conditions, but you do have the versatility to get a bit more closer to your subject without worrying of not capturing enough details. Some of the shots in this 2x mode look really good, like this one. There is also a slight blur to the background which makes it look like being captured with a real telephoto lens. iPhone 16e had a fair share of issues, but portrait mode was not one of it. It could take very good portrait shots, and so does this 17e. I think this one makes these shots look even better. This is also my favorite mode to shoot in on any smartphone, so when a phone gets this right, it instantly gains a huge respect from me. Now, how the portrait mode works is, most of the iPhones with multiple cameras use some information from their ultra-wide angle camera to detect the edges for these kind of shots, and Pro iPhones also use a LiDAR sensor with it to collect the depth information. This 17e doesn't have either, so it has to depend on software to do all of the work, which if you look at these shots seems to be getting it right just about every time. The edge detection is accurate, but there seems to be a hard line separating the subject from the background, so the portrait shots might not look exactly like from the iPhone 17 or the 17 Pro. But given that all of this is done via software, I think I can give this small issue a pass. It is also one of those things that most people won't even notice, or if I wanted to, I could have even made these shots look a lot more natural if I increase the aperture value to f4.0 or beyond that. One of the issues which I faced last year was that I had to be very close to the subject, or else the 16e would just not detect the edges. That is not an issue for the 17e. It had no problems detecting the edges even when I was this far away from my subject. Same with the 2x portrait shots. No problem detecting the edges even if I was far away from the subject. I feel like the faces are not the sharpest in these 2x zoomed in portraits, but if we take the image as a whole and look at the colors, skin tones and the white balance of the entire image along with the overall dynamic range, the 17e seems to be hitting all of the right points. Last year, the 16e also needed a person or a face in the shot in order to detect the edges, but with the 17e, this is no longer a requirement. It can now take portrait shots of objects as well, and it does it very well even if the object has complex edges like you see in these shots. This was such a deal breaker for me last year as I take a lot of portrait shots of objects. I personally feel like when you take portrait shots properly, it makes your images instantly stand out and they feel like they have been shot with a much more expensive camera. I usually have the aperture set to f1.8 or 2.2 just for these sample shots, so I can show you how good or bad the edge detection is. But if you want to make your shots look a lot more natural, have it set to something like f5.0 or slightly above it. This will make the background blur look a lot more natural and believable. Now we move to checking out the images which I took in indoors, artificial and lower lighting conditions. I am a lot more interested in this part, because other than a few hiccups, even the 16e would have got most of the shots that we saw until now look almost the same as the 17e, but it did not do so well when it came to lower light. So I'm very interested in checking out what this 17e with its updated processor and ISP can do in these situations. The image sensor on this phone and the aperture opening in front of it is the exact same as last year, so it captures similar amount of information as the 16e, but it seems to be processing the same information in a much better way. If I was looking at these images and no one told me which camera they were shot with, I honestly won't be guessing that these might have come out of the iPhone 17e. There's no straight giveaway in these shots. The light is great, colors look very good, there's no unnecessary noise in the darker parts, it doesn't even feel like the phone is trying to lift the shadows too much and add in more details in the darker parts. If I would have shown these images to you and told you that they were from iPhone 17, then there's a good chance that you would have believed me. So I guess ISP and the newer processor is making the 17e take better images in these situations, at least when we have a lot of ambient light around. Let's check out how things are when we get to even lower lighting conditions. When we were looking at the 48 megapixel shots and I was saying that the bin 24 megapixel mode helps during low lighting conditions, these were the conditions I was talking about. As you can probably see, the 17e is doing a really good job with these shots. That is thanks to the pixel binning. What this does is combines 4 pixels into one, making each new pixel slightly bigger, and this helps them capture more light and information. Other things which help with this are the wider aperture which lets in more light to the sensor, and the OIS which helps keep the sensor stable while it is capturing that light. When all of that information goes through the new ISP on the A19 chip, it results in images which look like this. As mentioned before, the iPhone 16e had the same camera hardware as the 17e, but it did not manage to deliver this good looking images in lower light. This goes to show how important post-processing is. You can feed two different phones with same amount of information, but the results would be vastly different and depend on how the phone's processor handles all of that information. I won't be saying that these low light shots are as good as the ones from the iPhone 17 or even from the iPhone 16 for that matter, but these are definitely better than the ones from the iPhone 16e. It also gets the night mode, and this phone when left to auto switches to this mode a lot quicker than the likes of the iPhone 16 or 17. It also takes at least 2 seconds to gather all of the information it needs for the shots to look good. I said at least 2 seconds because sometimes it even takes 3 to 4 seconds if the light is very low. I won't say that these images look very good, but I am satisfied with these results because I know how the 16E was in similar situations. This one is at least doing a good job of keeping the noise in check and the colors are looking as they were in real life. Now I say this in most of my camera reviews that I don't use my phone's camera a lot when there is not a lot of ambient light around. And this is true even if I am using an iPhone 17 Pro or some of the other high-end flagship phones. And this 17E had no chance of outperforming those flagship phones. So I didn't really take a lot of night mode shots with it other than the ones which I needed for these camera reviews and comparisons. This phone's camera is a decent performer in lower light and is definitely better than the iPhone 16E. But if you were looking for a phone with the primary purpose of shooting in these lighting conditions, I would say go for the iPhone 17 or at least the iPhone 16. That brings us to the front-facing camera. There's not really a lot to talk about here. It's the same 12 megapixel selfie camera which we have been getting on the iPhones for the last 2 or 3 years. The skin tones look good, colors look natural for the most part, the dynamic range is also satisfactory, it is just that the details seem to be missing a bit in these selfies. Apple could just as easily have put the 18 megapixel selfie camera on this phone like they did with the rest of the iPhone 17 series, but they chose not to. In this one instance, the phone captured some green tint in the skin tones of every single person in the shot. The lights or the shade on top of us were not green. There were only white lights around us, and even then the selfie camera messed up the colors. This never happened again in any other lighting conditions, whether indoors or outdoors, so I was a bit surprised with that one group selfie. Portrait selfies are very similar to the normal ones. The colors are on point, and since the background is blurred out, we also feel like there are more details in these images. Skin tones also look natural, and the edge detection is on point as well. Just make sure that if you have multiple people in your shot, all of the faces should be in the same plane of focus and equidistant from the camera. Or else this one will just keep the faces closest to the camera in focus and blur rest of them out. I also wish that we got the wide lens mode while shooting portrait selfies as well. I feel those portrait selfies would look even better. I have a similar request for the iPhone 17 and 17 Pro as well. You can shoot 4K 60fps videos with both the front and rear facing cameras. These videos, as you would expect from an iPhone, look really good. Given that this phone doesn't have sensor shift image stabilization like more premium iPhones do, some people were expecting the stabilization to be not that good. But the lens-based image stabilization on iPhones, even before the new sensor shift stabilization was introduced, was much superior than the stabilization on any other smartphone. So stabilization is really not an issue here. I have been shooting a lot of videos with this phone, and other than not having the versatility of zooming in or an ultra-wide lens, I think I am pretty satisfied with the results. So after looking at over 90 or so image and video samples, I think I am really impressed with the single camera on the back of this 17E. There barely has been any situation where it truly disappointed me. I really enjoyed taking images and videos with this phone. The camera app is just as quick to open as it is on the iPhone 17 and 17 Pro. The images are captured just as quickly. The processing quality and the time is very similar to those phones as well. And I feel that after the initial shock of not having the ultra-wide or a telephoto lens, having a single camera actually makes things simpler and uncomplicated. There were maybe 3 or 4 times where I felt like I would have got a different perspective of the scene if I had a telephoto lens, or maybe a bit more in the frame if I had a wider lens. But if I truly think about it, I did not really mind about using a phone with a single camera. I am always curious and ask my friends and family members about how they use the camera on their smartphones. And other than 1 or 2 very tech-savvy guys, most of the others never switch to the ultra-wide or the telephoto lens on their phone. This is a bit surprising, but that's just how vast majority of the people use their phone. Considering this, I believe most of the people will be happy with the single camera on this phone. I have a lot of videos lined up where I compare the cameras on this iPhone 17e with the ones on the iPhone 17, 16 and even the iPhone Air, so make sure you are subscribed and have the notifications turned on. That is it for this video guys. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel for a lot more videos about this iPhone 17e. You can also check out some of the other videos from this channel. This has been Sagar and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.